Okay, Leah Healey, speaker on number 26.
You're under her.
Hi, Leah Healey, 806 Park Avenue. I attended the area designation hearings. I was represented by a lawyer, Michael Rubin. He could not be here tonight to brief you on our take on this area designation. But I would encourage you to look at the record on 900 and 1000 Monroe, particularly 1000 Monroe. There's quite a bit of testimony of the Monroe property lawyer and owner with respect to the ironic distinction being made between this trucking facility and the trucking facility that is directly across the street from this in the name of ShopRite. And actually the trucks entering and exiting 900 Monroe are loading and unloading in a safer method than what has been allowed to be approved on at the ShopRite site. And it was a very interesting and enlightening piece of testimony, I thought, just how in use this facility actually is, and that if we've got a problem with trucking loading docks, why did we go ahead and approve a building right across the street in the Northwest Redevelopment Zone with a worse trucking situation? So I would encourage you to look at the fact that you are basically going to be putting into in an area designation a property that is subsisting quite well as a business, notwithstanding the heights of the ceilings are low. However, what I really want to talk to you tonight about is that I think it's a little disingenuous to just hear about the point of view of this particular expert and whether a zoning board approval is at all germane to a determination about whether a property meets the criteria, because you have the exact opposite opinion in the Southwest with respect to that zoning board approval. Exact opposite opinion. So I think you need to figure out who's right and who's wrong in order for your area designation to sustain challenge. The other thing I would say is there was a comment made tonight about how nobody's really going to want to perfect zoning board approval when there's an industrial property that looks like 900 Monroe or 1000 Monroe around it. And I would suggest to you that the Northwest Redevelopment Zone wouldn't have been developed at all if that were true. And that 800 Jackson, as I understand it, is under construction. So why is it that we suddenly decide that no one's going to build a residential unit or anything else because there's a property that doesn't look pretty? For that matter, a lot of the western edge of Hoboken would not have been developed at all. So I don't perceive that to be an opinion that I would put much merit in. And one of the things I think that we really have to look at here is the history of what's really gone on here. And I say this because if you decide to designate this tonight, which you may very well do, you have sitting in the audience some very interested parties. And they are Tarragon Ursa, who have, as my understanding, now perfected the sale of the fourth of the 4 properties just recently. And they have been acquiring that property back there, I would argue, just for this day. They have had representations that actually the public has been made aware of. I don't think that, in hindsight, the city government was acting appropriately, but we have been, as members of the public, receiving information from this administration about the development of the Western Edge property since 2004. That means that Tarragon Ursa has been in conversations with the administration about how it intends to develop this property since 2004. Yet today is 2007, and we are just now deciding whether or not we can designate this property. So there's a little bit of, I would say, something wrong here, something awry. And we knew it back in 2004 when members of this community saw that the city had done a deal with Tarragon Ursa before the redevelopment designation process had even started, and we took the city to court. And after a couple of years of legal expenses, the city lost that lawsuit, and the court told the city very clearly that you are not allowed to have agreements with developers, private negotiations in advance of designating an area, redevelopment area, and adopting a plan, because then you're violating due process and you're violating the statute. And what is really concerning me is that since 2004, and in this particular thing that was sent out to the public in January 2005, we see and hear about a pool that's supposed to be constructed and a community center on Block 102. We also receive another open space initiative which shows our esteemed elected officials, Congressman Menendez at that time, Senator Kenney, leaning over a set of plans. This is in December of 2004, which are the plans for the western edge. And these are the plans that ended up in what was called the Northwest Green. And we then, members of the public, received this document, which was the Northwest Green, Your Community, Your Open Space, Your Future, which basically laid out a series of buildings that were going to be built all along this western edge that we're considering tonight. So the fact is, the deal has been done, Tarragon has been anointed, and tonight we're going to put the land that they own in a redevelopment area. And my question is twofold for you in terms of what you are going to do now. Are you just going to go back into a room and do what you wanted to do, or what, I'm not saying you all wanted to do, but what this administration appeared to have wanted to do 4 years ago, and simply give them 12-story buildings across an entire area of land that was designated in the master plan for a park? Or are you going to have a serious process that is going to be competitive and that is going to put out there what it is that we want rather than what Tarragon wants to give us? So that's number one. Number two, in April of 1999, then Mayor Anthony Russo announced the Northwest Redevelopment Zone and the fact that he had struck a deal with Frank Rea. And this is that zone that is right next to this western edge zone that you are thinking about putting into redevelopment. That zone has been in existence now since 1998, and it consists of about 9 blocks. And when that deal was announced to the public in April 1999, we were told, number one, there will be 206 to 300 affordable housing units of the 894 that were being proposed. Number two, that we would receive a space for a new charter school and increase educational opportunities for children and future generations. Number three, we would receive a community center. We have gotten, to my knowledge, none of those things. Under the existing redevelopment deal that you have with Tarragon Ursa. And one of the things that they are proposing in their Northwest Green plan is to give you a community center on Block 102 of the existing redevelopment zone. So essentially what they proposed for the western edge was to give you something that they were to have delivered on in the existing Northwest Redevelopment Agreement. So in addition to hoping that if we end up with Tarragon Ursa on the other side of the table with us as the property owner in the western edge, that you will engage in some aggressive and competitive negotiations, that you will at the same time go back and look at what Tarragon Ursa was to have delivered to you under the existing redevelopment zone and decide whether or not they have in fact delivered it. Because one thing I do know we delivered to them, in addition to an enormous upzoning, we delivered to them a tax abatement. And I have a question tonight for Mr. Beto. Was that tax abatement in the Northwest Redevelopment Zone applied to only the affordable housing units that were built, or was it also applied to the market rate units?
Good.
Okay.
Director Beto, do you want to answer the question? I think we know the answer. Leah, while he's coming up here, who sent that publication out? Who was it sent out?
Which publication?
All of those
All of
pamphlets
those.
that you talked
I
about?
received them in the mail.
Hmm?
The Northwest Green, when we called the number that was on there and saw where the address was from the number, that it was clear this was a Tarragon Ursa mailing that came out during the mayoral election of 2005. These other two, or other three,
Is there something that says paid for by, published by, sent out by?
it says it's from Mayor David Roberts,
Okay.
and it says Mayor David Roberts and the Hoboken City Council.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Then this one says, I think this one says just Mayor David Roberts.
Okay. You've answered my question.
This one, Mayor David Roberts and the Hoboken City Council.
Thank you. You've answered my question. Thank
Okay.
you.